are only 5 metrics in your ad account that you need to track to help you diagnose and solve issues that are preventing you from scaling your business. Make sure you keep watching because I'll be showing you how to use this core metrics forecasting calculator that I'm giving you for free. The link's in the description so you can follow along. These metrics include your spend, your CPM, your click-through rate, your conversion rate, and your average order value. These are the only 5 metrics that you really need to directly affect in order to help influence your performance. These core metrics all work together to produce a specific outcome in your ad account, being your CPA or your ROAS. It's critical to understand how these core metrics relate to each other so that you can help build yourself a realistic forecast and paint the picture of what's likely to happen in your ad account based on historical data. What I always do when I'm creating a forecast for Facebook ads is I'll look at how much I have to spend versus my targets, and then I'll try to play around with these core metrics and try to find a realistic balance of what's likely to happen. I'll look at last year's performance and see what all of those core metrics over the course of that specific month ended up being. For the example I have in this picture, we're looking at February of 2022 versus February of 2023. Looking at February of 2022, it looks like we spent around $143,000 at a 2.45 ROAS and $122 CPA. Also, look at what's currently happening in my Facebook ad account. And looking at January of 2023, spent around $56,000 at a 2.23 ROAS and $158 CPA. And I'm also gonna note what CPMs looked like, what click-through rate looked like, what conversion rate looked like, and what our average order value was. Then I'll try to create a realistic picture of what I think is going to happen in February of 2023 based off February of 2022 and what's currently happening in January of 2023. Now you can see that I also have a February reach forecast, which is something that I think is unrealistic to actually occur, but also showing what these core metrics would need to look like to actually create the outcome of a, for example, 3.57 return on ad spend and a $99 CPA. And you'll note in the February 2023 reach forecast that my CPMs are slightly lower than they were in January. We're also having a higher click-through rate, so we're gonna assume that our ads are driving better click-through rates. Our conversion rate has also increased, which is more similar to what we saw in February of 2022. And then also our average order value is hopefully gonna hold at a higher $355 AOV versus what we saw in February of 2022, which was only a $302 AOV. And all of those core metrics amount to the outcome of a 3.57 ROAS and a $99 CPA. Now, I honestly think that's unrealistic, so I also created a more realistic forecast. I'm anticipating spending $135K at a $16 CPM, which I think we can kind of balance out between the lower CPMs we've been experiencing in January of 2023 and also striking that balance between the $16.72 CPMs that we saw in February of 2022. I'm anticipating our conversion rate to actually drop and stay a bit lower than it was in February of 2022, just based off what it looked like currently in 2023 so far. So we're gonna be riding at a 1% conversion rate and a $355 AOV, which I'm hoping will hold based off our current data. And those 5 metrics amount to a 2.88 ROAS and $123 CPA. Throughout the month, you should be tracking these metrics against your expectation and adjust as you go if necessary. By identifying which core metric is drastically off from your expectation, you can try to put more resources and time into fixing that specific metric. For example, if your click-through rate is too low, you may have a creative issue and you're not driving enough traffic to your website. If your conversion rate is far too low, then you may need to do some CRO on your website, test new landing pages, or just create a better holistic customer experience between your ad creative and your website. Later in this video, I'm gonna give you a bunch of different ideas of how to directly influence these metrics, so make sure you stick around for that. But before diving deeper into these topics, you need to understand something. All of these metrics need to be taken into full account in relation to each other. They're very easy to skew and be taken completely out of context. And the only real metric that matters in your ad account is your CPA. If you're making any decisions based on click-through rate, conversion rate, or any of these soft creative metrics like hook rate, you're making a bad decision because individually these metrics have no correlation to your financial outcome, being your CPA. But what really tells the story is when you look at the click-through rate versus the conversion rate and the average order value that ad creative is pushing. You can never look at these metrics individually. I've seen plenty of really low click-through rate ads that actually have really strong performance. It's because Facebook is giving you really high quality traffic, just not a lot of it. To prove my point, check out this chart. Across each scenario, our average order value stays consistent, as well as our CPMs and the amount of ad spend that we have. You can see that across each 4 of these scenarios, our goal CPA is $100 CPA, with a 1 return on ad spend. But notice how in scenario 1, we only had a 0.5% click-through rate and a conversion rate of a 2.8%. That still amounts to the same 1 ROAS and $100 CPA. In the second scenario, we have a 0.82% click-through rate and a 1.7% conversion rate. Now, scenario 3, we have a 1% click-through rate and a 1.4% conversion rate. If you think that a 1.6% click-through rate is better than a 0.5% click-through rate, then you're completely wrong, because this scenario table basically disproves it. It depends on what you're spending, what your CPM is, what your click-through rate is, what your conversion rate is. Now, you may be saying, why do I even look at these metrics at all if I can't even directly influence them? All these metrics do is help you identify and diagnose where in your ad account something is drastically off. Put all the data together, and one of these metrics is the one that's drastically off from your expected target, and that's the one that you know you need to focus on in order to help influence your account in the right direction. If you're ever drastically off from your targets, enter them into this calculator and try to figure out which metric is the one to focus on. I'm gonna give you some rapid fire responses to what I would do if I notice that one of these core metrics is off target. If your click-through rate is off, you know that this is a creative issue, and you wanna make sure that you're speaking to the right target audience. Ask yourself, how can I make this more attention grabbing, more enticing for my user? You also test different types of offers and see if that helps influence your click-through rate in the right direction. There's no easy answer to this, because click-through rate is one of the most confusing and misunderstood metrics like we talked about, because it doesn't really have any correlation to your financial outcome. So I wouldn't worry too much about your click-through rate, but what you should try to do is just simply make better ads. Test a vast amount of different types of creatives that look different visually, have completely different messaging, and also try to speak to completely different audience profiles. This way you're getting a lot of data back from your advertising, and maybe if click-through rate continues to be an issue, you can identify a new customer profile that's more likely to click and respond to your advertising. If your conversion rate is off, there's definitely a lot of factors that can be negatively influencing that. Make sure to check your website's load time and your bounce rate. I also like to measure the percent drop off throughout the different stages of my customer journey. For example, how many people viewed content on your site and then added to cart? Also, what's the percentage of users that added to cart and then initiated checkout? And what's the percentage of users that initiated checkout and then actually purchased? Recently, with one of my clients, we had a massive conversion rate issue that I identified using this exact process, and we found a huge drop off between initiate checkout and purchase. It just so happens that the same day we saw that big drop off, the client had made a website change. Honestly, the topic of conversion rate could be its entire own video, so I'm not gonna dive too deep into it. What you need to do is make sure that you have a very clear and seamless customer journey or overall customer experience on your website. It cannot be overly complex, and it needs to be clear and concise what is being sold and what your offer is. Dig into how your product is going to benefit the customer and make sure that it's apparent as soon as they land on the website. Focus on how your product is unique and why your customer should care and buy your product. Make sure you're flexing your own social proof and authority, and then creating a sense of safety for the customer. Safety can be elicited through guarantees and also just having a high quality website that doesn't feel cheap or tacky in any way. Lastly, testing offers like rebuttal upsells can actually influence customers to buy a higher average order value than they would have originally, because they feel like they're getting a special deal. And different offers like that can help influence conversion rate in a positive way. Also, test different landing page types. Some examples are listicles, collection pages, or custom built landing pages that have aspects of those different elements within them. A lot of times where I see conversion rate issues is where the ad experience differs greatly from the landing page experience. Customer lands on your website and has different messaging and different products, and they don't see what they wanted to see from the ad, then they're going to bounce. Next, we're gonna talk about CPMs, and I wanna be clear that CPMs are also not a way that you should ever measure performance. And influencing CPMs is mostly out of your control because it's directly influenced by the macroeconomic environment. But tracking CPMs from a benchmarking standpoint is a good idea because there are consistent fluctuations that happen year over year, and being able to track and measure those industry and macroeconomic trends is important to help give you a more realistic forecast. Again, very similar to click-through rate, CPMs have no direct correlation to the performance of your advertising. Sometimes you have higher CPMs because you're in a competitive space, but that doesn't mean that you can't have strong CPAs while still being hit with high CPMs. But I do want to note that you can get lower CPMs over time if you actually improve your quality score and your estimated action rate, which is overall going to get you a better alignment with Facebook's algorithm and give you a better bid in the auction. Facebook is going to deliver your ads to high value users based on your total value score. And the advertiser will generally pay less for each impression because the ad is more valuable for the user. The ad with the highest total value score is going to win the auction and will generally pay less for each impression depending on how valuable the impression is to the user. And the last metric I'm going to talk about is your AOV, or your average order value. Tracking your AOV is crucial so that you're hitting your profit margin goals. If your AOV starts to dip below your target, it's going to be more difficult to drive profitable growth. Here are several ways that you can improve your AOV. I always recommend bundling together best-selling items. This can improve your margins and let you drive higher ad spend at a higher CPA because your AOV increased. And cool pro tip here, if you create a high value bundle of your best-selling items, you can actually name it something unique that speaks directly to the benefit of what that bundle is going to give your customer. I've also seen brands be successful calling it bundle and save. Try to also increase your free shipping threshold. Play around with the monetary amount that it needs to be to get free shipping. And you can gamify this in your add to cart experience by having a loading bar that will say, hey, once you get to $100, you get free shipping, for example. I also recommend trying a rebuttal upsell on your website, or buy 2 get 1 free, or some variation of this. For example, if someone doesn't want to buy your $50 item, it's possible they are actually more willing to buy your $100 buy 3 get 1 free offer because they feel like they're getting more value from their purchase. This not only doubles your AOV, but it can also increase the lifetime value of the customer because they're more likely to purchase again the more product they have in hand. And my last note on this is that some people say, I really don't want to put a bundle together. I don't think anyone's going to purchase it. Don't even have to run traffic to the bundle page. Just simply create the bundle and just let it sit on your website and see if anyone buys it. Any single user that buys that bundle increases your average order value for both new customer revenue and also returning customer revenue. So you're essentially getting more bang for your buck from the same amount of traffic, which is why I think it's always worth testing. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you learned something valuable about these 5 core metrics in your ad account. Remember, it's so important to make sure you're tracking against these metrics for both creating a predictable forecast and also making sure that you can directly diagnose an issue in your ad account. If you have any questions on this topic, please feel free to leave a comment below. I'll make sure to answer everyone down there, and consider subscribing for more videos like this every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.